I just want to take this opportunity, first of all, to thank Rabbi Reuven for coming all the way from Florida. Very, very grateful. We're looking so forward to hearing his words of wisdom. And of course, I want to also thank Leora for displaying such leadership. She was here by a class, and she said it's a beautiful venue. Let me bring down a fantastic speaker who will inspire the students. So Leora had the idea, and she actually executed on the idea, which is fabulous. And thank you so much, and thank you, of course, for the delicious pizza as well, Leora. So without further ado, it's a great pleasure and honor to welcome Rabbi Reuven, who will share with us his life story and tell us how he went from Wall Street to becoming a rabbi, and what the transition was, why he changed his life. He was featured on CNBC, he's featured on Bloomberg News and other famous news outlets. It's a great pleasure to have you.
Baruch HaShem, thank you for the Rav. B'Shem HaShem na'aseh v'natzliach. We always excited to come back home, come back to New York. Truly amazing to see the transition. You know, in the old days, this was home. This was where I had a business, I had employees, house, family, and so on. And now it's all so far away, even though it really wasn't that long ago where I was still on Wall Street. So we don't have that much time, so I'm going to try to answer some questions. I'm going to try to cover some parts of the story, B'ezrat Hashem. There's many more details about the personal story on our website, B'ezratHashem.org. There was a recent video we made with my personal story with a lot of details that also had some footage from my old days, the interviews on CNBC and a few other things that you'll see from my past. But today I wanted to go over slightly part of the old story for anyone that hasn't heard it, but really more about the part that I haven't talked about, which is really more of the Teshuva process. Most of what I've talked about over the last few years is what got me to do Teshuva. Today I'd like to talk a little bit more about what you do once you decide to do Teshuva. So to give you a little bit of a brief background, I came to the United States when I was 10 years old. Didn't really know much English, but when you're 10 years old, learning a new language is pretty quick, and it's truly amazing. So, the Yetzirah always likes to interfere with my lectures, Baruch Hashem, but that tells us that we're doing something good, Baruch Hashem. So I brief part of my personal story. Born in Israel, came here when I was 10 years old, didn't really know much more than the first 3 letters of the alphabet. But when you're 10 years old, you go into a new country, you advance pretty quickly as far as language is concerned, and especially since I was a studious person, so I advanced pretty quickly. Went to school, played football, became an American. Even though we were brought up traditional in Israel, and we went to a Dati Leumi school, which is, half religious, half secular. As soon as you walk into America, unless you go 100% religious, you become part of the American system. And the American system is absolutely not religious. So religion became a distant memory, with the exception of a couple of holidays a year, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. You go to the synagogue just for old time's sake. You keep Pesach, you eat some matzah with chocolate, and you call yourself a Jew. And the thing is, though, is that throughout all of this time, the reason why most people do it, my family included, is because all of this time we are led to believe that our Judaism is optional. Whether you follow the law or not is optional. You can do it, great. If you don't do it, so what? And that's one of the things that I found out later on in my life, that it's not exactly so optional. The choice that we think we have, most people, have a tough time when it comes to free choice. They asked the question, we had a whole shiur about it a couple of weeks ago, the whole concept of free choice. If you have free choice, how is it possible that you actually have true free choice if God knows what you're going to do? If He knows what you're going to do, then it's technically not free choice. Is He causing you to do something else? Now, the easy way to explain it to our human mind is that even though God knows what you're going to do, it doesn't necessarily change your choice. So for example, if let's say I wrote down in an envelope a bunch of things, I gave it to you and I told you don't open the envelope until tomorrow. You went through your whole day. At the end of the day, you opened the envelope, you saw that I wrote down everything you did for that day. Meaning that I knew everything you did for the day before you did it. Did my knowledge of your action or inaction change your decision? No. Same goes where if I know that someone has instincts, at some point they're going to have to eat. But I'm going to give them two choices. I'm going to give them a pizza, I'm going to give them a plastic cup. Which one are they going to pick up? The pizza, because they're hungry. They're not going to eat the plastic cup if they're a civilized human being. So the fact that I knew that you're going to pick up the pizza did not change your choice. That's in essence a very simple version of explaining free choice. The true understanding of free choice is beyond us. According to the Rambam, it's not possible for a human being to understand free choice. Simply because you have to be God in order to know that. But what I just explained, everyone can understand, and that's, I think, more than enough to explain free choice. But in Judaism, I was brought up to believe, again, this is from my own mind, it's not necessarily that somebody told me this, but I was led to believe that being religious, keeping mitzvot, learning Torah, all of those, keeping Shabbat, kosher, all of those things were optional. If I did it, I have a better place in Gan Eden. If I don't do it, I'm still in Gan Eden, just a lower level. You know, like in that movie Titanic, where they had, the lower level for like the homeless people and the higher level for the rich people. So I thought, okay, so the guy that's Sadiq, that he learns Torah all day and he has a nice hat and beard and everything, he gets the higher level. Of course, he works harder than me. But everybody goes to Gan Eden. That was my belief. And I think that's the belief that most people either have or want to have. And I'm here to tell you it's false. It doesn't exist. There's no place in the Torah that says that exists. As much as sometimes you hear, even rabbis sometimes tell people that everyone goes to Gan Eden, it's not true. It's not true. The choice that we have, that I discovered after learning a lot of Torah, or at least as much as I possibly could at the time that I had, was that the choice we have is that if we do good, we get good. If we do bad, we definitely don't get good. Another example, if you go to work, you get paid. Lots of money. If you don't get to work, they send people to your house and they beat you up. That's the free choice we have. The free choice I thought we had was that if I don't go to work, nothing happens. If I go to work, I get paid. If I don't go to work, nothing happens. That's what I thought we had. So it's, either way, I break even. But later on, I discovered that no, it's not quite that. There is some type of punishment. There is some type of consequences for it. And this is a very, very important principle of faith in Judaism. It's one of the 13 principles of faith. For anyone that wants to consider themselves a Jew, anyone that wants to convert to Judaism, they must believe in the 13 principles of faith that the Rambam put together. One of them is the principle of schar and onish, reward and punishment. Anyone that says there's no such thing as punishment, they believe in a different religion. It's not Judaism. And the reason why is because in order for HaShem to be emet, meaning truth, there has to be reward and punishment. Or else, why make anybody do anything? Why should I have the same Gan Eden as Moshe Rabbeinu when he was extremely religious and I don't want to be religious? Why should Hitler be in the same place as some of the most righteous people that ever lived? Why? And we know that the whole concept of everyone goes to the same place, everything is wonderful, is intellectually dishonest. Baruch Hashem, everyone here looks educated, and everyone here looks like you've spent some time reading some books, whether it was secular or religious books. And you read books to be stimulated intellectually. As soon as you read a book, and it was on the cover of the book, it says it's about science, it's about, some type of really stimulating topic. But as soon as you open the book and it talks about Care Bears, What do? You close the book. This is nonsense. Shtuyot. I'm throwing this in the garbage. Give my money back. When we come to the world, we go to the business world, we want to get a promotion. We go to the boss, say, I want a promotion. Well, the boss says, yeah, but it's your first day. You can't have a promotion on your first day. You come back the second day and have a promotion now. He says, no. If you keep doing it, he's going to fire you. Why? Because you're acting like a Care Bear. It's not realistic. You can't get a promotion after your second day or after even your second week, even if you're a wonderful human being. For you to have the same position as the guy that after promotion, you have to earn it. To say otherwise is being intellectually dishonest. So we have to stop lying to ourselves. So I was put in a position where I had to be forced to stop lying to myself. Where after going to school and working really hard at school, I realized I didn't want to be in school anymore. I wanted to go make money. I went to Wall Street. And after paying my dues for the first 3 years, meaning that, working for other people, making them rich and me poor, eventually I got my break. And in 2001, I was finally allowed to be an independent contractor within a big firm, an independent broker, where I could start getting my own clients and also have my own bills that I had to pay. Every month I had to pay about $5,000 worth of bills to the office manager, for the office rent, for the secretary that I didn't use, for the papers I didn't want, and all the things that he charged me just to get his $5,000 a month. And whether I had it or not was irrelevant to him. He needed his money regardless, on top of the fact that he would get a percentage of everything that I make. Now if I told him, listen, but I'm a really nice guy, can I just get by without paying you? What do you think he would say? No. Stop acting like a Care Bear. It's not realistic. In the real world, there's no such thing. Everything has a cost. Everything has a cost. So, needless to say, the first 6 months of being independent, he took all the money. I took nothing, and I had to borrow $1 every day from this guy named Dimitri, so I could buy coffee and a donut, 50 cents for each, and that was my food for the day. I sneak on the bus every single day in order to get to work. Leave the house at around 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, get to the office at 7 or 7:30, leave the office somewhere around midnight, 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning, get home by 2, sleep for a couple of hours, and do it all over again every day. Eventually, HaShem blessed me with some success, where after about 6 months, I didn't need to borrow $1 a day. I actually got my first $1,000 check that I actually kept, which to me was like all the money in the world. But the following month, I got $5,000, which at that point I thought I won the lotto. The following month is another $5,000. Month later was $10,000. In November of 2002, which was only about a year after I started being independent, I made $117,000 in 1 month. So I broke a company office record, and all of a sudden, I became the guy that everyone wanted to be, even though just a few months ago, I was the guy they were making fun of, because I worked so much and made no money. So then I continued building a business. Within the next 6 months, I got to a point where I was the number 3 largest producing broker in the country for the company out of 5,000 people. Made my first $1 million. I was 23 years old. Now, $1 million, I mean, I actually took home $1 million. Not $1 million like there's $1 million somewhere in the air, but I get like $3. After taxes and fees and paper and cups and secretaries. No, $1 million, like I actually had $1 million, which was something amazing when just a year before I had to borrow $1. But at that point I had to make a choice. In a business world, people don't necessarily like to see you grow because they feel like it's taking food off of their table. Even though there's 7.5 billion people, sometimes you'll have competitors act as if there's only one customer in the world. You ever see a guy, after his competitor opened a store next door to him, how upset he gets? Oh, he's going to steal all my customers. What do you mean? It's 7.5 billion people. He's going to take all of them? If he's taking all of them, then it should probably work for him. You'd probably be a millionaire anyway. Why are you so worried? There's a lot of people in the world. You don't have to worry about competition, ever. Never have to worry about competition. There's an enormous amount of clients. People that worry about competition are small-minded people. Small-minded people never succeed. So then I realized that my competitors were my peers. So I had to leave. I had to decide that it's time for me to leave, go to a different place. But what's the next place? Is it going to be a different firm? Or is it going to be my own firm? And obviously the natural entrepreneurial mentality was to start my own company. And I started my own company. Started hiring some people. Educated from all different types of fancy schools. And all were very excited to work for this young guy that, made a few bucks. But things got better. Started making more money. It got to a point that by 2006, a bad month would be a couple $100,000. A good month, the best month of that year was 1.6 million. So if we were making money the first few years, by 2006 we got to a point where we were printing money. Looking at price tag was no longer optional. It was just nonsense. You buy whatever you want, you do whatever you want. But interestingly enough, it wasn't materialistic. I liked making money for competitive reasons. But as far as buying toys, I never bought toys. Never bought boats or planes or any of that stuff. It never really interested me. Most of the money I had, I either gave to people to help them, or I invested into the business, into the stock market, and so on. At one point, I made a smart decision where I actually invested some money in Torah. And I, even though I wasn't religious, I bought a Sefer Torah. I had a Sefer Torah made in Israel, and we had a whole party. It was amazing. But again, this was because I had the money. I heard it was a big mitzvah. And it wasn't because I was planning on becoming religious anytime soon. And the reason why I wasn't planning on becoming religious anytime soon is because my wife wasn't Jewish. My wife and business partner wasn't Jewish, so for me to tell her, hey, listen, I'm going to become religious, would mean I have to get a divorce. That wasn't happening. Thank you. That wasn't happening. I liked my life. I liked my partner. Everything was wonderful. Why change? Especially since up to now, I believed that Judaism was optional. You want to be religious? Ashrecha. Good for you. Be religious. I don't. I believe in God. In my heart. I do Shema Yisrael before I go to sleep. I eat kosher when I can, or whatever I understand is kosher. I don't eat pig. I don't eat milk and meat. I don't work on Shabbat. I go to the casino instead. That's rest for me. Rationalize the Torah. What's wrong with it? A lot. Once you actually delve into the truth, you realize just how much is wrong with it. You realize that the kosher pizza is not really kosher because you bought it from Domino's or from Pizza Hut or some non-Jewish place, and according to me, if it was dairy, it was kosher. What I didn't realize was that dairy that's made by Goyim also uses meat from the stomachs of animals. Most of the time it's pigs, sometimes it's different animals, and the reason why is because it makes the cheese better. And a few other different additions to it. But this already has been happening for over 2,000 years. It's actually mentioned in the Gemara, where they used different parts of the stomach of pigs, for cheese. This is not like a new invention or anything. So when you eat pizza from a non-kosher place, you're actually eating not only non-kosher, but you're eating milk and meat, which is one thing I thought I was keeping. On top of that, when I realized that on Shabbat, I didn't work. I went to the casino. I watched movies. I slept. Did nothing. Whatever. I did whatever I wanted. Went away to different vacations. And I thought, if I'm not working, that's fine. But the whole concept of observing Shabbat has nothing to do with work. Nothing to do with work. What you're not allowed to do on Shabbat is you're not allowed to do melachot. But you are allowed to work, which means avodah. Avodah means you're working for HaShem. Melacha means you're doing certain actions that are part of the secular world, part of the mundane world, part of the day-to-day life. Has nothing to do with Shabbat, but it's specifically things that are creating. So for example, if you want to move a table on Shabbat, it's perfectly fine. It's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with it. If you want to talk to somebody, it's perfectly fine. Nothing wrong with it. But if the table that you're moving is going to be used to, not because you want to move it from place to place, but because you want to dig into the ground. You're using the table to dig into the ground, to make a hole in the ground. That becomes a different action. If the conversation you're having is not just conversation about what Rashi said this week, but it's a conversation about some real estate you want to buy, that's no longer allowed. So, it's not necessarily the action, it's the consequence of your action. So, as far as not working, I thought if I'm not working, it's fine. But it's not about not working. It's about what you're actually doing with your time. So, 2006, everything is fine. I try to keep whatever I can, whatever makes sense to me. I donate a bunch of money. Whoever needed would come to me and I would give the money. So that, in my mind, made me a tzaddik. I was very generous. So, why should I go to synagogue if I already am better than most of these people, in my mind? So, eventually, God gets your attention. There was one time a bunch of kids playing on the beach. And one of the kids decided he doesn't want to play on the beach, and he wants to wave to the boat that's far away. So one of the adults said, no, stop waving to the boat. He's not going to see you. And the kid is waving to the boat. He's waving to the boat. He's excited about waving to the boat. And the adult, who doesn't know the kid, just finds this ridiculous. He's trying to convince him to stop. No, go play with the rest of the kids. Build some sand castle or something. But the kid's like, I don't want to play with sand. I want to wave to the boat until he waves back to me. So the adult says, what makes you think that the captain is going to wave back to you? And the little boy says, because he's my father. So the adult says, okay, so maybe he's going to look for you. Maybe he is looking for you. Maybe he is waving back to you. Maybe. What is this like? This is us. God is constantly looking for us. He give you 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 120 years. However many years each one of us is gifted before we come to this world. But throughout the entire time, He's looking for you. He's looking for you. And you can be one of two choices. You can be one of the people that's constantly focused on the sand castle, where you build it, you build it, you build it, the water comes and it blows up. You build it, you build it, you build it, the wind comes and it blows up. You're playing with things and you're just wasting your time, really. You're focusing on material. You're focusing on this world so much. You build, you build, you build. Eventually, it's worthless. Why? Because you can't take it with you to the next world. Even though Steve Jobs, who probably had a part of everyone's life in this room because you had an iPhone at some point, amazing inventions, amazing brain, amazing bank account, none of it matters. He's dead. He can't take any of that with him. As a matter of fact, before he died, it was known that he had at least $7 billion. $7 billion. Writing $7 billion should make you tired, let alone having it. $7 billion, but with all of that money, he couldn't buy one liver to save his life for one day. All of that money, $7 billion. 7 billion iPhones, 7 billion iPads. However much you could possibly imagine, you would have much more now. Couldn't buy one liver. And all of you have it for free. So in reality, you're richer than him. When you're playing with the sand, the material world, you focus so much on this world, eventually you realize it's all for nothing. Yes, it's nice to have a limo take you to wherever you want to go. It's nice to have a big house. It's nice to have a bank account that gives you comfort, that everything's going to be fine. but you'd give all of it away, all of it, for another minute to live. 1 minute. If the richest guy in the world was told, listen, you're either going to die right now or you'll live another minute, but you'll be poured that 1 minute, he'll still take it. He'll still take it. So if we focus so much on chasing careers, chasing houses, chasing all of this stuff, eventually we realize it's all for nothing. Depends when you realize it, is the question. Sometimes HaShem will give you more than one try to get your attention. He'll give you tests. See if he can get your attention. If you continue playing with the sand, he'll give you more time, and more time, and more time. This is based on your own accounting between you and him. But eventually, time runs out. Eventually, he says, you can't continue playing with the sand, you have to be the guy that's waving to me. You have to be the guy that's waving to me. If not, I'm going to come off, I'm going to park the boat, and I'm going to come in and get you. And that's exactly what happened to me. So in May of 2006, I made my $1.6 million for that 1 month. It was wonderful. I went to a vacation for a month to Las Vegas, played in the World Series of Poker, and a bunch of other tournaments, and I thought I was on top of the world. Little did I know that I was only months away from having everything turn upside down. In November 18th of 2006, that very same year, just a few months later, I decided to have an elective surgery. An elective surgery means it's not something that you have to have, but it was just something that annoyed me. It's something that annoys 2 out of 3 people in the world. It's called hemorrhoids. And I went to the doctor and he told me, listen, this is a very simple surgery. I have 2 to 3 a day. For the last 16 years, he says, I perform 2 to 3 surgeries a day. It's very simple. You feel uncomfortable for a couple of days. You go back to work. Everything is fine. By the way, uncomfortable means pain. Or pressure also means pain. But for him, it's uncomfortable. So he says uncomfortable. So anyway, so I said, okay, this uncomfortable, annoying thing that's annoying me twice a year, so I'll be uncomfortable for a couple of days and have an excuse for another couple of days of vacation. No problem. Well, it wasn't so uncomfortable. In fact, when I woke up out of the surgery, it was beyond uncomfortable. I was screaming and yelling from pain because what I felt was that someone took a big knife, like in the Commando movies, connected it to an electric outlet, and just continued cutting me over and over again without stopping. Everywhere. Not just that area of the body. And it won't stop. And I'm screaming and I'm yelling and they're giving me painkillers, and for the first time in my life I realized that none of this stuff actually works for me. I never took drugs because I liked my brain, so this was the first time they put drugs in my system and it didn't work. Eventually they gave me the most amount of morphine legally allowed to calm my body down, and I calmed down. They said, listen, I don't know, we don't know exactly what happened, but you seem fine now, go home. I was excited to go home. This was a very exciting day for me, having all this pain and finding out what this Gehenom that some people told me about actually looks like in real life. So I went home. We had a shawarma sandwich on the way home. Got home, ate the sandwich, went to sleep, told everyone thank you for coming, and I'm going to sleep, and I thought that it was all over. It was just beginning. 45 minutes later, I woke up with even worse pain than I did after the surgery. The only difference is that this time it didn't stop for 62 days. For 62 days, this pain continued, but it continued getting worse. My body started failing because I wasn't able to sleep. And I was also taking a lot of different types of medicine, which was ruining my body. Eventually, I started urinating blood. Blood started coming out of my eyes, my ears, and all types of wonderful things. And eventually, the doctor said, yeah, he's probably dying. From what? We have no idea. No idea what happened. The pain he has nothing to do with the surgery. Nothing to do with it. Something went wrong. Something went awfully wrong. Could have something to do with the guy on the boat, though. So, after 2 months of this horrifying pain, things started calming down. Instead of taking 50 painkillers a day, I came down to about 20. for me that was manageable, and I started going back to work, started going back to my life, and thought that, okay, I got a second chance at life. Let me start, going back to things. 9 months later, I feel a pain in the back of my leg. I thought maybe I pulled a muscle. By later that night, I can't really move. The next morning, I'm in an emergency room. They tell me I have something called an abscess, which is an infection. But this one is in between two muscles, and it's so big that if I would have waited another hour or two, it would have blown up, went into my blood system, and I would have probably died instantly. So I said, okay, so this is not good. He's like, yeah, we have to do an emergency surgery. This surgery is much worse than the first surgery because this time I actually have to stay in the intensive care unit next to the people that are dying for the next 10 days. This was the first surgery. After a few weeks of being in the hospital, and these surgeries are definitely not fun because this type of surgery, they have to keep the area open. And they have to keep reopening it every day. If that wasn't bad enough, they reopen it every day to make sure that the infection comes out. So it gives you a really good taste of how many sensors you have in your body. So after a few weeks of this wonderful experience, I go back home. I think this is over. 6 months later, another abscess, another surgery. 3 months later, another abscess, another surgery. And it eventually becomes every month. Every single month, and this continues for 7 years. 7 years of 24 hours a day of pain, but the pain is no longer one area. The pain is now everything from the bottom of my neck all the way to the bottom of my feet, where eventually my legs double in size and I can't really walk. Everything that could go wrong goes wrong. I also start losing money faster than I made it. If it was a miracle to make it in the first place, it was a bigger miracle of how we lost it. Everything that went from sand to gold in the past turned from gold back to sand. Just everything went wrong. And because I had money and, I had the ability to pay for medicine and all types of doctors and so on, so we went to over 50 different doctors. Not even looking for a cure. I mean, initially we thought we were looking for a cure. After a few years of this, we realized there is no cure. We just want a diagnosis. What happened? What happened? Most people ask me, did you sue the doctor? And then the answer is no, and simply because I had more money than him. What do I need his money for? I just want to be healthy. I didn't realize I was going to be broke just a few years later. But I continued looking for a diagnosis. After a while, I realized that there's no diagnosis. There's no cure. This is it. This is it. Now, when you're in pain 24 hours a day, both emotionally and physically, you tend to not want to live. Life kind of loses its meaning. So I started looking at my life and said, okay, you know what, I got to put an end to this nightmare. Only problem is these two wonderful women that are investing so much into me, my mother and my wife. And they're constantly crying, and I kind of feel bad that if I killed myself, they're going to cry more. You think about these things. But after a while, you stop thinking about it. After a while, it's like, you know what? They'll manage. So I started thinking about legitimately how to commit suicide. Now, by the way, people that think about suicide are usually very rational. People that commit suicide are irrational. It's two different things. Thinking about it is a natural thing. And the reason why is because we tend to think that everything that's in our life is permanent. When someone is upset, they think they will be upset forever. When someone is happy, they think they'll be happy forever. People forget that things are temporary. Most things in life are temporary. So when you get upset, you start crying, and you lose yourself, you start saying stupid things, you start doing stupid things. Why? Because you think that you're going to have this horrible feeling forever. You don't realize that like a week from now, you're going to forget you had this feeling, bichlal. You're not going to think about this feeling. This guy, who is he? Who is this woman? Who is she? This boss, this job, none of it matters anymore. You forgot about it. But at the moment that you feel it, you think it's permanent. Same thing with happiness. People get to an elated state of mind when they make a lot of money, when they have intimate relations, when they get a job, when their team wins or something like that. They start celebrating. I saw these two guys in the airport this morning, and they were talking about, I don't know, some team. I don't really know what they were talking about. They were talking about some team, and one of the guys was so excited about if his team wins. Oh, man, you don't know what's going to happen, man, if they win. And he was so excited. It was like his whole body was moving. Like, I could bring this guy to the lecture. His whole body was like, yo, you don't understand what's going to happen if this team wins. What's going to happen? Nothing. Nothing's going to happen. You still have to pay rent every month. You still have to pay taxes. You still have to eat. Nothing's going to happen. Maybe the guys on the team something's going to change for them. They're going to get a bonus. You get nothing. What are you so excited for? But he was so excited about, if this team's going to win. And he was, I told him I got to bring this guy to the lecture. He didn't want to come though. He wasn't Jewish. So, we think that everything is permanent. I thought that my state of mind was going to be permanent. I thought my body was going to be permanent. I thought nothing's going to change. I thought God hated me. So I figured, okay, what do I do? Now, one of the things that the sages teach us in the Torah is that God is not going to give you a test you can't pass. Now, the reason why is because if He brought you to the world purely to suffer, He wouldn't bring you here. There's a different place for that. It's not this world. It's called Gehenna. We're not going to go into what it means and what happens there, but in so many words, it's very hot. It's not a fun place. If He wanted you to purely suffer, you'd go there. He didn't bring you here to suffer. He brought you here to overcome an obstacle. He brought you here to fulfill a mission. He brought you here to work. Not work for stock market company or building company or some company, but work for Him. Do something for Him. Fulfill a purpose. Do something. But part of that purpose is overcoming obstacles. Part of that purpose was building character. And to build character requires experience. The CEO that earned his position is a much better CEO than a CEO that got the job from his daddy. Usually the one that got the job from Abba is not such a good CEO. The one that earned it, going from the mailroom to being a CEO, he's usually the guy that takes the company to the next level. And the reason why is because he has experience. But that experience, if you ask him, can you tell him about your experience? When you read the bios of the most successful people in the world, you tend to see that they don't talk about the vacations to Cancun or to Australia or to the jungle. They don't talk about that. What do they talk about? I was homeless. I was poor. I was divorced. I lost a kid, chas v'shalom. I did this. All the hardship of their life. They talk to you about their nightmares. If you want to read a bio, a real bio of a successful person, that means you want to read about their nightmares. Because that's what made them. Their experience is what made them. The hardships, not the vacations, not the fancy cars and the planes. That's what sells books. What actually makes the book is the tough experience. So you want to have experience, you want to be something special, then you're in line. Hashem wants you to have it also. So I had a lot of different experiences, except the experience of sickness. At least not to that extent. I was sick when I was 16 years old for a little while, but not to that extent. So Hashem said, listen, I gave you a bunch of chances, you didn't listen. But now, I'm calling you, and you have to listen. But He also said that He's going to give me a test that, He's not going to give me a test that He can't pass. So that means that any test that I have, any test that you have, He knows you can pass it, for sure. Just like any father is not going to tell his son, honey, can you go pick up the car for me? But not pick up the car from the store, but pick it up over your head and bring it into the kitchen. A mom is not going to tell her 4-year-old daughter to pick up the oven over her head. Why? because she knows she can't do it. Why should I give her a test she can't pass? Why should I have her do something that I know she's going to fail? Because if I give her a test that I know for a fact she's going to fail, then what she's going to think, oh, I hate her. But I don't hate her, I love her. If HaShem would give us tests that He knew for sure that we would fail, that means He hates us. If He hated us, He put us in a different place, not here. Anything you have in the world, you can pass. As hard and as big as it seems, you can pass. It's the only reason you have it. You can pass it, maybe he can't. He can pass it, maybe you can't. I can pass it, maybe somebody else can't. But whatever test you are given, you can for sure pass it, because He loves you. I didn't think I was going to be able to pass. So Hashem says, oh, you got to that point. You got to the point where you don't think you can pass. I got to send the rescue team. On the day that I started planning what I'm going to do, how I'm going to do it, all of that stuff, my mom, God bless her, decided that she's going to start calling a bunch of rabbis and ask for blessings. And she, like every Jewish mom, somehow they all have a black book full of rabbis' names. And she starts calling all these rabbis from different places around the world. And she doesn't get any answers. Almost 2 hours of dialing the phone, no answers. Eventually, somebody answers, a woman answers in Israel, and she asks for a certain rabbi, and the woman says, I'm sorry, it's the wrong number. So imagine you're dialing a phone number, 2 hours, eventually somebody picks up, there's life on the other side of the phone, but it's the wrong phone number. So naturally what you would do, start crying. So my mom starts crying hysterical, and Hashem shows the people who's the owner of the house by making the woman be the only woman that we need to reach. Who is this woman? The woman then asks my mom, Doris, why are you crying? She calls my mom by her name. My mom is in shock, says, how do you know my name? She says, I know your name because I'm your niece. She says, Prina. She says, how did I get to you? I don't have your phone number, and we've never spoken on the phone ever. They don't have each other's phone number. But somehow, she reached the wrong phone number that reached her, which we later find out is the only person that could actually help us. And on top of it, she recognized her voice, which is strange on its own. But that's Hashem for you. When Hashem peaks and tells you, hey, I'm the one that's running the house, I'm the one that's pulling the strings, sometimes He wants you to see it. She says, why are you crying? She tells her the whole story. My son is dying, my son is this, my son is that. She says, well, if you're looking for a blessing, why don't you call Rabbi Ephraim, my brother? He's Talmid Chacham, and he lives very close to Rabbi Ovadia, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, before he passed. He's close to him, maybe connected to him, and so on. He would talk to me? Yeah, of course, he'll talk to you. Why not? You're the famous aunt from America. So, my mom calls Rabbi Ephraim. He's in the kollel, he calls her back, and they start talking. And I didn't know that Rabbi Ephraim existed. When I left Israel when I was 10 years old, he was an infant. He's much younger than I am. He's about 10 years younger than I am. And I didn't even realize that he existed. So it's not like we kept in touch or anything. So when I called my mom and she told me about this Rabbi Ephraim person, I had no idea what she was talking about. The interesting part is when I called her. Now she's talking to Rabbi Ephraim, and Rabbi Ephraim gets to the point, and he says, does he speak Hebrew? She says, yes, he speaks Hebrew. So can I just call him myself and just talk to him? She goes, no, he'll never talk to you. And at that very moment is when I called her on the other line. When she says he won't talk to you, I decided to call my mom for the first time in a long time. And my mom is hysterical, crying, and she says, talk to him. And I have no idea what she's talking about because I'm going into the middle of the conversation. She's, talk to him. And I said, who? Ephraim. Like, who's this Ephraim? And why did he make you cry? She goes, it's your cousin. He can help you. I said, okay, just stop crying. Have whoever you want call me. Rabbi Ephraim calls me. We talk for an hour and 40 minutes. What do we talk about? He tells me, first story, he tells me about the biblical story about Judah and Tamar. It took me about 4 years to realize why he told me that story. So for another day, I'll explain. But it was an amazing story. I loved it. It's one of the Sefer Bereshit in Genesis. An amazing, especially when you realize that the Mashiach comes from there, and a lot of deep secrets to it. So we talked about that. So I see this guy's a smart guy, so I start asking him questions. And he answers in a very different way than what I'm used to. When I ask people for questions, they usually give me their opinion. If I ask you, what do you think of the market? You tell me what you think of the market based on your opinion and somewhat experience. What do you think of the economy? You tell me your opinion, your experience. If you tell me, what do you think of this building? You tell me about your opinion and experience. The way he answered questions was very unusual to me. First of all, I asked him the question. He made me feel great. How? He told me, oh, that's the same question that Rabbi so-and-so asked 812 years ago in this book, on this page, and this line, and he recites the whole thing by heart. In the beginning, I didn't realize it was by heart. I'm like, he had the book in front of him? How did he know I was going to ask the question? So then just to see what happens, I asked another question. It's like, oh, what a great question, which made me feel smart. I'm asking these great questions these big rabbis asked 300 years ago, 800 years ago. I'm like, yeah, of course they ask the same questions. Come on. I asked the same question. I'm thinking who I am. Little do I know these people are giants of giants. If I could eventually be the dust under their feet, it's already an accomplishment. Like, yeah, of course the Rambam. Yeah, me and Rambam like this. Of course he asks the same question as me. So I ask another question. He's like, yeah, of course, Rabbi so-and-so asked in this book, on this page, 350 years ago, 450 years ago. And he gives me these, I'm like, how do you know the pages? How do you know the lines? How do you know this stuff? You have all these books in front of you? He goes, no. And I didn't understand, what do you mean, no? No, you just asked the question. I knew the answer when you asked the question. And it took me a while to understand what this means. Like, you actually know all these books by heart? And little by little, I started realizing this is not an opinion. This is a source. This is somebody else's information that has a source that comes from Mount Sinai. And it was unusual. So we spoke for an hour and 40 minutes. It was very, very invigorating. It's different. I was surrounded by yes men. I was surrounded by people that were constantly telling me yes, yes, yes. Applaud everything I did. And all of a sudden, half somebody actually knows what he's talking about. So I was looking forward for another phone call. But after that phone call, I went to my wife and I told her he knows it. And she goes, who and what? I said, Ephraim. It's like, what does he know? Like, he knows the secret. He goes, what secret to what? Secret to the world. That's honestly what I told her. I'm like, he knows how the world is made up. She goes, keep talking to him. I said, I don't know his phone number. He's like, I'll call you again. So, following week, as silly as all this sounds, all happened. You can't even make this stuff up. Thursday, 4 o'clock, he calls me. We're having a 3-hour conversation. Questions and answers. I ask questions. He gives me page numbers, rabbis' names, lines. He recites it by heart. I ask every single question I can imagine, and I didn't realize how many questions I had. The following week, we have a conversation. At Thursday, 4 o'clock, 5 hours. Following week, Thursday, 4 o'clock, 7 hours. And from that moment on, every single Thursday, for an average of 6 to 7 hours, we have questions and answers. If you had a question, I probably asked it. I didn't even know I had that many questions. I started making up questions just to see how much he knows. But also because I knew he knew. Dinosaurs, no problem. Aliens, purpose of life, money, women, anything. I just started asking questions, but he didn't just tell me his opinion. Not once in all the years that I know him did he ever give me his opinion without me asking him specifically for his opinion. All of it was, what's God's opinion? Because that's the only opinion that counts. Your opinion may change next week. This week you like ice cream, next week you like beef jerky. Your opinion changes. God's doesn't. Doesn't. It's permanent. So I started learning God's opinion. And I found out that God's opinion hasn't changed. Ever. But more than that, God's opinion is very, very strong. It's not politically correct. And quite frankly, it cares less about whether you like it or not. even when Moses sort of tried to have a conversation with God about maybe you should do this or maybe you should do that, God said, I'll do whatever I please. I'll give to whoever I want to give, and I'll take from whoever I want to take, without having to give anyone an explanation for it. The good news is that while this very strict Creator, King of Kings, He's also our Father. He also loves us. So He tries to give us explanations. But the explanation is here. It's in His book. It's called the Torah. You want the explanations to everything in your life? It's here. These are the instructions. Torah also means instructions. Instructions how to live. Instructions how to be successful in marriage, in business, in friendship, in anything. But one of the most important parts of Torah is to be a decent human being. This is one of the things that we forget in the world we live in. Being a decent human being, people try to do it, but superficially. They try to say, listen, you shouldn't say certain things because it may offend someone. It may offend someone that's homosexual. It may offend someone that's black. It may offend someone that's Jewish. It may offend someone that's whatever, something else. In reality, everything else they do is offensive. So, when you use people's opinions, those opinions are warped and tainted and usually not so good. God's opinion has some foundation to it. So I started learning, and it became extraordinary. I became addicted to it. Little by little, I started realizing that the situation that I'm in is not easy, but also not good. The fact that my wife is not Jewish was not a good thing, but I'm not planning on leaving her, especially since she was the only one that was there for me for the last 7 years when I was dying. So then I decided that, okay, maybe I should learn a little bit about her religion and see, maybe there's a match, maybe it's good, maybe it's bad, maybe there's something. Now, I've always thought that Christianity was like second best. I never necessarily thought it was fake. I just thought it was second best. I thought it was like, it was like Torah was real and, Christianity was like the remix. I started learning about it, and I realized it's not the remix. I realized it's fake. It's 100% man-made fake religion. All you need to do is look at their own book, and you see that there is man-made mistakes in every single page. Our Torah has 304,805 letters. Their New Testament has approximately 100,000. Our Torah only has one version. Their version, their New Testament, has over 200,000 versions. There's no two Christians in the entire planet that believe the same thing. I met many of them, and I helped many of them convert too. No two Christians believe the same thing. Each one of them takes something else from the book and makes it their own. Someone says J.C. Penney is God. Another guy says he's a Mashiach. Another guy says he's a rabbi. Another guy says he's a tzaddik. Another guy says he's just somebody. Everybody has some other explanation for something else. No two believe the same thing. No two ever read the entire Bible, because the entire Bible, according to them, includes the Torah, which means that there's 75% Torah and 25% New Testament, which means that 75% is true. We all agree the Torah is true. Even the Christians believe the Torah is true. Only thing is, they don't teach it. And they actually tell you not to learn it. According to them, you shouldn't learn it because it's not relevant anymore. The reality is, it's not because it's not relevant, it's because it contradicts the other 25%. There are several places in the Torah where HaShem says that Yaakov Avinu came down to Egypt with 70 souls. 70 people. New Testament says 75. This is a simple human error. God did not forget 5 people. That means God didn't write the New Testament. The New Testament says there's a wrong address for the Ma'arat Machpelah, the cave of Machpelah. which still exists. You can go see it, even though there's a bunch of terrorists there. It still exists. The New Testament put it in the wrong city. This is a problem. God didn't forget the address, especially for such an important cave. And so on and so forth. There are countless mistakes in this New Testament, but the reason why there are over 2 billion people that believe it is because most people are told not to read the Old Testament. So Jews that have the prize in their hand, have the gold in their hand, take it for granted sometimes, like I did. Sometimes God's going to tell you, listen, it's time for you to start reading it. So I fell in love with it, and then eventually I realized that I have to save this woman. Even if it's not for marriage, I have to save her. So I started learning. And everything I learned, I taught her. We continued learning together. Eventually, through a different set of miracles, she realized that on her own, that Christianity is the worst thing on earth. It's complete falsehood, and over 2 billion people have fell for it, including her. And on that day, she said, okay, I'm ready to convert, and she took on everything. That day, even though the Bet Din didn't obviously take her overnight, the first day she realized everything is true, she took on every single mitzvah we knew of. Modesty, kisui rosh, everything. If we knew it, we did it. And this leads me to the next point. There's not that much time left, but I'll cover it. Once we decided to do tshuva, the one advantage we had that I think most people don't realize how significant it is that we actually had a rabbi. And I think that's one of the things that's the most important part of your tshuva, is to make yourself a rabbi. In the Pirkei Avot book that I have in front of me, there's a series of Pirkei Avot that we did, and we're still doing. We're up to, I think, lecture number 52 or 53. The 6th lecture, or the 6th Mishnah, says, Aseh lecha rav. It says, make yourself a rabbi. Now the Mishnayot and Pirkei Avot are in order. From Mount Sinai all the way to the Talmudic times. So in a span of many, many years. Which means that the 6th Mishnah is very close to Mount Sinai. And this 6th Mishnah tells you it's important for you to make yourself a rabbi. Meaning that it's so significant to make yourself a rabbi that you can connect to, that you can talk to, that you could ask questions, that you can cry to, that you could talk to, that you could reason with, that without it, you'll be lost. It's very, very easy to lose yourself. And that's why sometimes you see some people start doing tshuva and take on more than what they really can. All of a sudden, the guy didn't keep Shabbat, didn't keep kosher, didn't keep nothing. Next week, he has a beard. A week later, he has payas. 3 weeks later, he's already wearing a $10,000 hat, but he still doesn't know halachot Shabbat. He still doesn't know halachot Shabbat, but he looks like he just came from Breslov. What are you doing? Why? And the reason why a lot of people do this is because many people think that Judaism has to do with exterior. Exterior is important, but it's not as important as here. Tshuva is inside. Tshuva is what's in your heart. But what leads you to action. Not, hey, I believe in God in my heart. That's nonsense. That's like says, I believe I'm rich in my heart. No, your bank account says if you're rich or not. I believe my wife loves me. Well, you can believe what you want, but if she left you and she filed for a divorce, she doesn't love you, my friend. So you have to be real. So what I mean in your heart mean what leads you to action. So how do you get to a point? What do you do? First and foremost, you have to make yourself to connect to a rabbi. Whoever the rabbi is, whoever you connect to, whoever you ask. You can have probably most of the time you can have multiple rabbis in your life. You can have a certain rabbi that's a local rabbi. Local rabbi is going to be the day-to-day person that you ask day-to-day questions. Sometimes the rabbi that motivates you more is going to be a rabbi that you watch on TV or on YouTube or on in different lectures from different places in the world. He may be located in Australia, maybe located in Florida, maybe located in New York, wherever he's located. The point is that he could be your lecturer every week, or that motivates you. And then you have your halacha rabbi. That could potentially be your local rabbi that knows his stuff, or it could be a rabbi that specializes in a certain type of halacha. For example, if you need not every rabbi knows everything. If you need a rabbi that's a specialist in business, that may or may not be your local rabbi. You have to go to a rabbi that's an expert in business. Doesn't not only know the laws of business, but knows business. Same thing, it could be a rabbi that helps you with find a zivug, find a spouse, and so on and so forth. You're probably going to have multiple rabbis, but you always have to have one main guy that directs you to the others. One main one that's going to direct you to the others, that's the one that's the one. You have to have a rabbi. And the reason why is because he's the one that's going to call you out. He's the one that's going to tell you, hey, you're taking too much. You're doing too much. Relax. Al tiyeh tzadik harbe. Don't be overly righteous, Shlomo HaMelech says. You just did Teshuva 3 months ago. You don't need to grow a beard that reaches the floor. You just did Teshuva 3 months ago. You don't need to do Ta'anit Dibur and don't talk for the whole day. Relax, you can study in a normal way. You don't have to not talk. Take things one at a time. Now, how do you decide what to do? First and foremost, you have to start with the foundation. You have to start with the stuff that's the most important. So, Shabbat is foundation. Kosher is part of foundation. Modesty is part of foundation. There's certain foundational mitzvot where if you don't do them, you have a problem. Learning Torah on a daily basis is foundation. If you don't learn, you won't know. There's no such thing as a righteous person that doesn't learn Torah. No such thing. En am haaretz chasid. There's no such thing. There's no way you can be righteous with HaShem, according to His definition, without learning His Torah. Because you need to know His instructions. So, first and foremost, you have to do the foundational stuff. You have to learn Torah every day. You have to take on certain things. The second thing is that you have to learn about what you're doing. So, if you want to do something, for example, you want to do Shabbat. You want to be modest. You want to keep kosher. Learn about it. Take a book. Okay, I want to learn about kosher. What's the significance of kosher? Take a book. There's a few videos online. Whatever it is, take a few things. Why should I keep kosher? The more you learn about a mitzvah, the more connected to it you become. If you become connected to the mitzvah, it'll give you cheshek. It'll give you the inclination and the desire to do it. But if just somebody tells you, hey, listen, you should keep Shabbat. Why? Because if you don't, God hates you. I don't want to. So? That's his problem. Like if you don't really know the significance of Shabbat, it's like, I don't care. But once you realize Shabbat is this, or you realize all the significant things of Shabbat, it's amazing. It's endless amount of reward that you get for it. It's literally the make or break of a tshuva. Then, okay, this makes more sense. Learning Torah, if you ever want to never be bored, learn Torah. Many people get depressed because they're bored. They get bored. People get bored, especially young generation. They like to go on vacation so they can run away from reality. They like to do drugs because they want to run from reality. They like to change relationships because they want to run away from reality. Everyone wants to run away from reality. And the reason why is because reality, their version of reality, is terrible. It's boring. Their brain doesn't work because their brain depends on something material. Something that's here. Something they can touch. Something they can see. When you learn Torah, you will never be bored. Once you get into it, not day one. You have to get into it. Why? And the reason why is because the Torah leads you to constantly think about different things. How do I implement this? What does this mean? What did the rabbi say? What did he say? And it's just constantly moving parts. It's like the machine got turned on. It's been off for 25, 30 years, and all of a sudden, in the beginning, the cobwebs are off. After a while, it's not rusty anymore. Eventually, it's running constantly. Eventually it gets to a point, it's like, wow, I can't wait for the next shiur. I can't wait for the next lecture. I can't wait for the next book. You start swallowing books because it gives you life. And that's why the Torah says that the Torah is Sam Chaim. It's the drug of life. So, few to do things is whatever tshuva you're going to do, make sure you're serious. Don't spend your whole life playing with the sand. Be the guy that's waving to Hashem. Say, okay, God, I got you. You're over there. I see you. I'm not going to wait for you to come off the boat like you did with Yaron. I see you. Let me start doing something. Something. Next thing is, start with the foundation. Start with the, don't be one of these people, no, I'm just going to give tzedakah. And that's going to make me righteous. It's not going to make you righteous to give tzedakah. No one in the history of mankind has ever gone to Gan Eden purely because of tzedakah. If you don't keep Shabbat, you don't keep kosher, you don't keep modesty, you don't keep the foundational principles of faith, tzedakah is not going to help you. It's just going to buy you more time in this world. I gave a lot of it. Didn't help me. Only bought me more time. Be a decent human being. Learn Musar. Musar is character development. This will help you in all parts of life. Business, relationships, Torah, connection with God, everything. Do as much as you can to learn about God. But get to a point where Torah becomes an important part of your everyday life. Not like once a week, once on Shabbat, once in a while, when I have time. If you're going to breathe today, learn Torah today. If you're not going to breathe, don't learn. If you're not going to breathe today, don't have to learn. But if you're going to breathe, learn. Any day you plan on breathing, also learn. One woman asked Rav Nisim again, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, what about covering your hair? A married woman in Judaism has to cover her hair with a mitpachat, with a scarf or a hat. She says, a woman that's single doesn't have to cover her hair. What about a married woman? Is there any leniency? Any leniency that if she's married, she doesn't have to cover her hair? He says, yes, there is one. All the women got excited. They're already ready to take off the kisui rosh. So yeah, there's one leniency. And what's the leniency? Kvod Harav, this is one of the giants of giants. He's going to give us a leniency of kisui rosh. Because if she doesn't have a head, she doesn't have to cover her head. So there's certain things that we have to do. Certain things we have to do. So, start foundational stuff of Judaism. Learn Torah every day. If you had to pick what to do first, start with learning. And the reason why is because learning is going to get you to everything else. Whereas doing without knowing why, eventually you're going to stop. Learn. Learn as much as possible. Watch lectures, read books. Only learn stuff you're interested in. That's also very important in the beginning. If you're not interested in it, put the book down, pick a different book. In the beginning, it's critical to learn only what you're interested in. If my lectures bore you, do not watch me. Please, do me a favor, don't watch my lectures if I'm boring you. I'm serious. Why? Because I could hurt your tshuva. Only if I get your heart shaking a little bit and you're doing something about it, watch. If it doesn't, go somewhere else. Watch a different rabbi, different rabbanit, whatever it is. Do something else. Read a book. Don't watch someone just because, oh, no, I know him, or I did nothing. It's all nonsense. We're here to save our souls. Don't read a book because it's a famous book. Read if you're interested. The only book you're obligated to read, whether you like it or not, is the Torah. But this can't be boring. Just read some commentary, you see the most amazing stories in the world. But there's different things. Ask for guidance. Stay in touch with the rabbis. What book should I do? What mitzvah should I do? Always ask for guidance. What's going to happen? There's no such thing as a stupid question. There's no such thing. I used to think that some of the questions I asked were the silliest questions in the world. And I'll give you guys an example of one woman that we helped convert to Judaism. And this woman was already going through conversion before she met us for 4 years. 4 years. And when she sat with my wife to go through learning about Taharat Mishpacha, she asked my wife, isn't it uncomfortable though to go to the mikveh? And she said, no, it's actually a wonderful experience. You go to the mikveh once a month, and it's wonderful. She gets separating from everything. It's very spiritual, it's very holy, and so on and so forth. But the woman said, no, but isn't it uncomfortable that somebody's touching you? My wife looked at us, what do you mean somebody's touching you? She thought that the woman that monitors the bedin, the mikveh, actually is the one that checks her and touches her. wife told him, Chas v'shalom, nobody touches you. This is the worst. Who told you this? She goes, no, I just thought. I never asked. I thought it was a stupid question. I thought it was a stupid question, so I never asked. She thought that someone actually does this thing. There's no such thing as a stupid question. Everything you want to ask, everything you've asked, everything you're going to ask is important. And to finish it off, to understand, one of the important rabbinical jobs that we have in Judaism is for a rabbi to check whether a woman is pure or not, if there's a safek, if there's a doubt. And there's something called a bdika. And this is something that some people are like, oh, this is a strange job that somebody's going to have. Well, just so you know, without going into too many details, because there's not enough time, not because it's not important, one of the most important rabbis, if not the most important rabbis in history, also did it. And his name was David HaMelech. King David, which the Messiah comes from him, that was his job too. To check the bdika for women to make sure if they're pure or not pure for their husbands. The point being here is that there's no such thing as a stupid question. There's no such thing as a question that's not relevant. There's no such thing. You have to, the person that you pick as your rabbi, you have to feel comfortable with him, to ask him everything. So this is probably the most important part of your tshuva. And the reason why is because this rabbi is going to be the one that's going to navigate you, where to go, how to do, what to do, when to do. Are you ready for this? Are you not ready for this? What you need to learn, what you don't need to learn, what's for a later time, what's for now, and so on. The more you do this, the better your tshuva is going to be. And last but not least, take it seriously. Because eternity is on the line. Any questions? A few minutes? We didn't cover the whole Torah, so you have a few questions, but we have a little bit of time. I answered some of your questions, I think. Some of them. Some. No? Nothing? Yeah. Hardest thing for me to accept is that the pain was for a purpose. That losing my health at such a young age, losing money, didn't really matter to me as much as losing my health. But just having my whole life go upside down, getting to a point where I was literally in pain for 24 hours a day, surgeries and so on, getting to a point where I realized that it was actually all for my benefit. It was for my own good, and eventually, B'ezrat HaShem, only because of this Torah, realizing that it was actually the best thing that ever happened. The greatest thing that ever happened to me was going through that nightmare.
What was the turning point for you in your health? Was it a blessing? Was it
Oh, yeah, so I mean, it's after I started learning, I mean, the pain continued. It actually got worse for a little while. But psychologically, once I realized that it has a purpose, has a higher purpose, I started dealing with it better. Even though I still had just as much pain, I was able to tolerate it. And mental is the biggest battle. It's even more than the physical. Physical is a nightmare, don't get me wrong. I mean, you never quite get used to physical pain. But once you are looking at it in a positive perspective, life becomes tolerable. The pain becomes temporary. Everything just has a time and place, if you will. So that was the first stage. The second stage was that after my wife converted, we started getting some major miracles, and in so many words, the closer we got to HaShem, the more we did, the healthier I got. And eventually I got to a point where, Baruch Hashem, I'm 99% healthy. I mean, once in a while I have something, but it's very, very minute. Obviously, I wasn't even able to walk or stand to give you guys a lecture today. Baruch Hashem, I'm flying everywhere and giving lectures and working 20-something hours a day. So, Baruch Hashem, I'm perfectly healthy. And that's not due to any medicine. It's not due to any doctors. Despite going to over 50 different doctors, we still to this day never got a diagnosis. Still to this day, no one knew what happened. No one knows what happened. People speculated with 1.5 million different things. We tried a lot of things. We tried traditional medicine, different type of medicine. I even got to be a part of a an experiment, a science experiment, where they started injecting me with ozone to purify my blood, which, according to what people told me, what chemotherapy feels like, this feels like it also. It was a nightmare. And to me, it felt like death. But so it became part of an experiment for several months, and it didn't help. And pretty much nothing helped. Steroids, all types of medicine, nothing helped. Only thing that helped is Torah. The more I did it, things started just working. My body stopped hurting. Infections became more, infrequent. Instead of getting something every month, it became every 3 months, then every 5 months, then every 6 months. Then it just became once in a blue moon. And even when it came, it was superficial. That would just go away with either a couple of antibiotics, or it would just pop on its own and a few days later. Just things changed. My body changed again. I'm not back to where I was, let's say, 25 years old, but it's drastically better. Yeah. No? Yeah.
You've had a lot of non-religious people around you, family, friends, I'm guessing, and so...
Everyone.
Yeah. So how did they react to you, and how did you react to them?
Yeah, with the exception of my mom, who was very, very for me getting religious, everyone else was against it. And they weren't necessarily against it because they didn't like God, or they were anti-religious. They were against it because they didn't think that was my problem. They didn't think that me being religious or not religious is going to change anything. I'm sick. How is religion going to change it? Because the vision, or the visual or perspective that people have of God when you're not connected to Him is very limited. It's human. People think that God is a man. Even though they don't say God is a man like the Christians do, they believe God is a man. And the reason why is because, the reason why I say that is because they limit God. For some reason or another, God's always broke. People always think that God's broke. He doesn't have any money. He built the whole world. He spent all of his money in creating the world twice, because the generation of Noah destroyed it. And somehow, when it comes to Parnassah, everyone wants to work on Shabbat because I have to work on Shabbat. I have to make money. What, you don't believe that God's going to give you the money for not working on Shabbat? Oh, I don't know. Maybe I need to help him. Like, oh, people have this warped vision where God needs help. So everyone believed that God needs help to heal me. So I need to go to doctors. I need to work extra hard. I need to go make my money back. I need to go do this. I need to go do that. And that was the flaw. That is the continuous flaw in the system. People don't have enough emunah in Hashem. People have no understanding that Hashem is everything, and He is able to do anything He wants. If He wants you to be healed, you'll be healed. He wants you to be sick, you'll be sick. All the doctors in the world could all stand in one room and say, this guy is going to live for 1 more minute. If Hashem decides, that person will live for another 120 years. Doctors' opinions mean nothing. Bank accounts mean nothing. If you watch some of my lectures, I say plenty of personal stories of personal miracles I've had, whether it be money, health miracles. Baruch Hashem, I see miracles every day. And some of them, you just can't make up the stories. You make up 1 story, 2 stories, 3 stories. How many stories are you going to make up? I mean, you have to already become, I don't know, Harry Potter already by this point. I see miracles every single day. And it's not just my miracles, my students. My students see miracles every day. It's amazing. And the reason why is because once we decide, okay, this is the God of the Torah is the only God. And if He's God, He's God all the time. Not just sometimes. That means we're going all in. All in. Everything I know I'm doing. No sometimes, no maybe, no if, no buts. I'm all in. Whatever I can do, I'm doing. And that's, in my opinion, it's the only way to do it. Going 50-50, you're going to lose. Being half religious, you're going to lose. Eventually, you're going to break. People that are half religious, they want to like dip into the secular world, go to the ball game, go to, to the clubs, go have a couple of drinks once in a while, and be religious on the weekends. Eventually, it breaks. You have to pick a side. You have to pick a side. You can't do both. Especially in this generation. Generation of the Mashiach is going to have more tests than all the generations put together. Eventually, you're going to have to make a choice. Can't be 50-50. It's either you want to be successful or you want to be failure. There's no like, man, nothing. All in or nothing. That's the most important thing that I think is my rabbi taught me. It's either you're all in or nothing. Not necessarily saying you have to do all of it today. Not because you don't even know what to do all of it today. But you intend to learn everything and take on everything over time and do it. Don't play games with God. He's not your friend. He's not your brother. He's not your buddy. He's God. The King of Kings. We get scared when we see a cop chasing us on the highway. It's just human beings. We get scared because the IRS is knocking on the door. Maybe they want to audit us. It's just humans. We get scared when some president passes a law that may affect our neighborhood. It's just a human being. It's the King of Kings. It's the one that's responsible for the cells in your body. It's not your friend. So, if you don't play games with God, you're already in the right step. You start playing games. No, you know what? I'm going to keep Shabbat, but I'm going to stay not modest for a little longer. But you know it's wrong though, right? Yeah, but I'm not ready. But you know it's wrong. If you know it's wrong, you have to stop. You have to do whatever you can. Stay in the house. Don't play games with God. Because I played games. I didn't win. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. And that's the thing. There's too many tests out there, especially young people. Honestly, I don't envy anyone that's younger than me, because I don't know if I would be able to do tshuva when I was 20 years old. I tried when I was 17 years old. I did tshuva for a year and a half, and then I failed. And the reason why is because I learned. I stopped learning. Eventually, I stopped. So, I think the few things that you have to work on is get yourself a rabbi, learn some Torah, take it seriously, and work on the foundation first. Every mitzvah you're going to do, learn about it. Don't just do stuff because it's nice. Don't become a chassid because it's cool to be a chassid. You know, be at your own level, but be serious. And I think, B'ezrat Hashem, you'll have a lot of siyata d'ishmael. B'ezrat Hashem, we have another lecture that's completely different. Right now we're going to have in Queens. It's about drug addiction. Completely different perspective about drugs and drug addiction. I think anyone that comes will enjoy it. But if you can't come, you can still watch it on Facebook and YouTube and all these other things. But B'ezrat Hashem, I see you all soon. Baruch Adonai L'olam. Amen ve'amen.